All right. So this week we're going to continue our alien invasion animation. Okay, but there are a couple things in here that I want to kind of focus on that are going to help you guys as you go through the conclusion of this animation. Right? There's some rigging things that we're going to take a look at. But there's also some procedure that we need to talk about as well, because now that we're working with multiple shots inside of an animated space, we need to talk about how we're going to manage all of those shots. Because when you're in an animatic kind of rough stage, you can be really loosey-goosey, but you're going to get to a point where you're going to need to start making actual production assets, right? Animation files that contain all the keyframes and all the camera composition and camera blocking that's supposed to show up in the final render of your film, right? So we're going to focus on a little bit of rigging today, and we're also going to talk a little bit about procedure. To help you guys out, if we were to travel over into the week 4 bundle on Canvas, let's check it out real fast. Okay, week 4 in the module section. Okay, so our homework this week is to finish our alien invasion animation, okay? Is to take it from these raw kind of bare bones that we have in our animatic into something that looks a little bit more representative of the final animation. Okay, you're going to have the entire week to do it, and it should go pretty fast. And your lab assignment this week is going to be a component of that final animation. Yeah.
So can our animation be longer than 15 minutes?
Absolutely. Yeah. You know, these I would recommend that you kind of try to keep it in that zone, right? Don't make a minute. That's a lot of animation, right? I'm never, ever going to say no to going above and beyond the Call of Duty. But don't kill yourself either, okay? Keep in mind that this is going to be something that we're going to try to accomplish in the course of the next week, okay? So don't make it too complex that it's impossible to make, right? All right, so you're going to be finishing this, and the complete submission for this assignment is just a QuickTime movie, okay? So I don't need all your project files. I just need the final composition of all the shots combined into one timeline. And we're going to be looking at some technology today in After Effects that's going to allow us to take a whole series of small shots, individual renders, and we're going to look at the timeline and start exploring how we can start editing all these pieces together so that we can create something that's a little bit more complex, and it will give us a nice layer of control over each one of these shots. When we try to do everything inside of Modo, it turns into almost this uncontrollable beast, right? We want to do micro moments. We want to just have one project file that represents one shot and one movement. That way, if we need to make a change or an edit, we're just changing that one thing and not being forced to change everything that comes after it inside the sequence, right? So at the conclusion of this assignment, you're just going to be turning in the final QuickTime movie. Now, to help us out, to help us get us going where we need to go this week, I have a simple little lab assignment. You're going to get some time in class today to do the turret control. So we're going to go over this in class. We'll talk about where we can find a whole bunch of really great sci-fi assets inside the Modo preset library, how we can build a simple little turret. I'm going to go through that section a little bit faster than I have in the past, but not to worry. I've provided you with a complete video down here, rigging a turret and some camera switching stuff that I think would be really helpful for you to go over again if you need to see it in a little bit more of an encapsulated moment. So there's some resources for you to help. Okay, so our goal this week is to get the alien invasion done. That's our exclusive goal. Now, to help us out with that, let's jump over into Modo real fast and start doing some rigging stuff. Because one of the components, and we saw this in almost all of our animatics this week, was to create an animation that included a simple little turret. Okay, I'm a big fan of kit bashing as a 3D modeler. Does anyone know what kit bashing is? Yeah, what's kit bashing?
Two different sets of kits, basically kind of like model kits, and then start adding different parts from those to create something completely.
Absolutely. If you go back in time to when to the 60s and 70s, when people were physically building models, of the Millennium Falcon or an X-wing starfighter, all of those components were handmade, okay? They're all made out of plastic for the most part, plastic and wood, okay? One of the things they did, and the Y-wing is such a great example of this, is that all those little greebly pieces that went on the back, all the little bolts and the wires and all these strange things, well, those are actually component pieces of a tank model or a B-52 model or something. And they took these little pieces and they glued them onto the outside in really interesting ways to make a Y-wing starfighter, right? That's kit bashing, taking a whole bunch of pre-assembled pieces and combining them together to make something new and creative from it. Well, kit bashing is still alive and kicking in this modern era of digital 3D modeling, and luckily for us, the Modo Asset Library does a great job and has a great workflow of allowing us to continue to practice this. Now, where can we go quickly inside of the Modo interface to find our preset library? F6, absolutely. The F6 key on your keyboard will bring open the preset library. Okay. Now, we used to have a layout tab. Let's see, is it still around in some? No, it's not around anymore. They're kind of toying around with a lot of the layout stuff. Is it in setup? No, it's just all of our. Okay, so the F6 is really the best way to get access to all of your presets. Now, working with the preset library is pretty easy. However, it's just a gigantic folder system. So we have a folder on this computer called Assets. And please note that I'm going into the Assets folder, not Cloud Assets. This is the folder stored in the internet, okay, which we can download from, but this is the fastest way to do it. The Assets folder, the meshes, and then where I'm going to go, I zoomed in a little too far here, I apologize, is way down here into Vehicles, and then we have Spacecraft. If you just click on it, you'll see all the different assets that come with Modo. These are great science fiction-y parts and pieces. There's a lot of stuff in here. I definitely encourage you to go through this. Adding any of these into the system is really, really easy. Let me see if I can find one real fast. Let me see if I can find one that I used in the demonstration. Where is it? Yeah, let's use this one down over here. So if I wanted to add this part into my system, into my project file, simply just double-clicking on it will load it into your scene file. And there we go. We're ready to rock and roll. Absolutely. Once it's in there, it's geometry, just like any other geometry. It's in its own item list, but it's just geo. So I have that item selected, and I've gone into my polygon selection state, and it's just like any other piece of geometry at this point. So how do we get access to our preset library? What's the magic keyboard shortcut? F6 on your keyboard. F6. And I hit F5 on accident just there. This is what it looks like. Okay? And specifically, we're going to Assets, Meshes, and I encourage you to explore this. There's a lot of really good stuff in here. Oh, some of you guys needed city stuff. I think if I remember, yeah, skyscrapers. You're welcome. Say again? Please do. Yeah, please do. You're more than welcome and encouraged to use any of the presets that come with Modo for the assignments that we have in this class.
Is that so we're not spending all of our time modeling stuff?
Bingo. Yeah. Yeah. So open up Vehicles. Yeah, it's in there. All right. So check it out. Explore it. All these assets are made available to you. They're actually part of the Modo installation. So definitely check it out. They're pretty fun. All right, let's get back to this turret real fast and start looking at how we're going to make a simple little control rig that facilitates the construction of this turret. As with all things rigging, where should we begin? What's the first thing that we should consider? Analyze everything. And Kevin is right, because what are we doing in that analysis?
Separate.
Figuring out what we need, exactly. So what do we need in this animation? Well, let's figure it out for a second. I think for my turret, what I want to have is I want to have maybe 3 degrees of rotation. I want my turret to rotate like this, or actually just 2 degrees of rotation. Rotate like this, okay, around its y-axis, and then rotate up and down along its x-axis. That's really all of the rotation that I need, okay? It also would be pretty neat to create some sort of system that allows me to fire some bullets out of my turret. That'd be neat. So those are the 2 goals here. Those 2 degrees of rotation and then a path system that allows us to fire some bullets. What we need to do is make sure that the model is oriented correctly to our 3-dimensional scene, right? Now, if you're playing with the same model that I'm playing with, I'm going to guess, and this is just my interpretation of it, that those are the barrels on the screen right side of the gun, okay? That's the front of the gun. Right now, is the front of the gun facing the front of the scene? No. It's facing the rear of the scene. The barrels are facing towards the negative side of the z-axis. So we got some work we got to do. Now, it's important that when we're messing with the geometry here, that we make these kind of root level changes to the model in our component modes and polygons. We don't want to do it in item mode because that's going to mess up our rig. Okay. So I'm in polygons. Okay. We can continue to practice our modo modeling paradigm that if nothing is selected, everything is selected, right? So I want to turn everything around. So simply leaving everything unselected and firing off the E key will give me my tool handles. Now, is this really where I want to have my tool handles placed? Not really, right? Because you can see pretty quickly here that the tool handles are placed offset from the location of the center point. Now, I'm not in item mode. I'm editing polygons, but I still would love nothing more to have my tool handles placed right there. That way, everything is kind of being rotated around that central core. Okay? How can I do that? Pop quiz. Yeah. Yeah. We're lucky in this particular moment that the location that we want to rotate our polygons around is the origin of the scene. We can see it right there. Okay? Simply changing our action center to origin, bloop, we'll place our tool handles at precisely the area that I want to rotate all these polygons around. And I'm simply going to do it just to a value of 180. And now my turret's facing the right way.
How do you get the base of the turret to be on the origin?
I didn't do anything. I just simply double-clicked on it, and that's where it was loaded into the scene that way.
So I dragged it in and it didn't.
Yeah. Okay.
Places it
where your mouse ends up. Yeah. Yep. All right. So now that this is kind of pointed in the right direction, we can start the next stage of our edit, which is to begin ripping apart the model into the areas that we want to animate individually. Now, to get the 2 axes of rotation, or the 2 degrees of rotation that I'm after, I think what I'm going to create are 3 separate items that are all going to work in tandem with each other. What would be those 3 separate items? What do you think? One's going to be the base, so that's going to be its own item. Maybe the middle section, like all of this. Yeah, that's so the base is going to stay stationary. It's not going to move, right? However, to get the rotation around the y-axis that I'm after, I want to strip out all of those polygons into their own item. That way I can animate them independently, right? Move them separately from the rest of the unit. And then the remainder, the barrels and the little mechanism on the top there, that'll be the 3rd item. So let's just do it real fast. I'm going to Command X, Command V. Let's just name this a little bit more intelligently. So this is going to be the base. Yeah. Are you recording this? Absolutely. And as a reminder, both, this, I have some pre-built videos that go over this in Canvas. So middle, we need one more mesh item in here called top. And this is going to include all the geometry naturally for the top. So I'm in polygons. I'm on the wrong mesh item. There we go. Command X to cut. Command V to paste. And now we have everything in its own item. I'll reorganize my item list just to make it a little bit more readable. Base, middle, top. Since we're starting to break things out onto their own items, what's the next natural thing that you should be thinking about? After we separate out the parts of our model that are going to be animated independently, what do we need to do to each one of those parts? Center points, right? We have to define where in our 3-dimensional space all of the rotation and the transformation of this item is going to occur. So let's do it real quick. The base is done. You're welcome. That's an easy one. But the middle, if you look very carefully, there's the center point of the middle way down over there. Where should I probably have the center point be? What would make the most sense? Where is this item going to be? Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great practice to start localizing the location of our center points to the location of the geometry, right? So let's do it real fast. Here's what I'm going to choose. I'm going to go into edges here real fast and simply double click on the edge loop at the base of my turret. And that's where I want to center my work plane. This button will allow me to change the location of my work plane to the selected components. Okay? And with that done, I can grab my center point and my to work plane position tool in my setup collection will put it where I want it to go, just like we did on the catapult. Really nothing different. It's a great workflow for us. Now, if we reset the work plane and grab the item, hit the 5 key to go into item mode. Yeah, now it's rotating where I want it to rotate. Okay? Let's do it one more time for the top. The top is a little bit different. Okay? Because I want, where should I, if I was to fire off my item transform tool, this is how it's going to rotate, like that. Let's turn everything else on. And yeah, there's some massive clipping going on, and it's really not giving me the compelling illusion of rotation that I'm after, right? So where would be probably a better place to put the center point for this item? Doesn't really feel like it's rotating on the little rail system up in here, right? Yeah, I think that's a good spot for it. Adrian, you have a comment? Suggestion? Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great idea. So we could put it like in here, but really, if you look at it, if you wanted to be super accurate, we want to create the illusion that it's sliding on the rails here on these guys, right? And this kind of speaks to the power of the motor rigging system, is that we can place the work plane wherever we want, and then choose to edit the center points of our item to that location of the work plane. So let's do it real fast. I'm actually going to take the polygons, all of these in here. Let's see. Yeah, let's just do this. I'm going to grab that bottom edge loop. And if I was to align my work plane to those selected edges, there we go. Here's a great trick, something that I do pretty frequently, just to kind of really understand where my work plane is. Okay? Under the work plane button here, if you hold down the Option key, the Alt key on a PC, you'll see all of your work plane edit options. One of which that I really like is Draw Axis, which is just really going to communicate to you where the center of the work plane is. See those little indicator lines? This is the origin of the work plane. Okay? So you get a nice visualization as to where the work plane center point really is. And I think that's going to work for me. Yeah, let's give it a try. Let's go back to the top here. There we go. Now I can grab the center point for that item and move it to the center of my work plane. All right, let's test it. The only way to know for sure is to test it out. Yeah, that's a step in the right direction, but it's still kind of not really what I want. But I'll let you guys continue to explore where we could put the center point to give me the best. I think for today's practice, that's good enough. I want to move on. All right, so now that I have all of my movable items separated out onto their own item, I've adjusted the center points for all of those items. What's next? Think about the context of the rig that we're trying to create. We're trying to create a turret that will fire at some objects here.
Master controller.
I like it. Master controller. Yeah, let's start parenting things together. I think this is a good time to start making some relationships between items, right? Because ideally, I want to be able to grab like a master controller, just like we did on the catapult, right? And to be able to move that master controller and have the rest of my rig move along with it. So we need to have some relationships inside of the system here that will get us where we need to go. So let's start parenting things together. I want the base to be the parent of my entire hierarchy here. So I'm going to start, I'll take the middle, drag it on top of base. I'll take top and drag it on top of middle to create a simple little hierarchy. And with that done, let's just test it. If I grab the base, fire off item transform, yeah, the entire thing moves, which is what I want. I can still rotate the base independent, or the middle part independently, and I can still rotate the top independently. All right. Things are starting to look pretty good. I'm going to hit undo, put all those things back. I can just reset the transformations, but I'm just going to do that. Okay. All right. So now this is starting to look pretty solid. I'm liking this hierarchy inside of my item list. I'm going to continue to add a couple more elements in here that'll make this a little bit more usable. How cool would it be to leverage the power of some of the constraints that we created and that we explored not last week, but the week before, to increase the functionality and automate some of the animation of this rig, right? Now, if we go into our modifiers section, here are all of our constraints. Is there any constraints in here that attract your attention? Position constraint, I like that. Yeah, what else? Rotation. Let's get rotation is fun, but there's one more that's a little bit more powerful than rotation. Think about how we're going to be using this rig in the context of our animation. We're going to need to have this rig point at another object, right? Maybe one of our alien spacecraft? Direction. How cool would it be for the turret to automatically track the spaceship in the sky? That'd be neat. Let's see if we can do that, right? Kind of helps make the animation of our turret a little bit more interesting. Now, in order for us to have my turret automatically track, we need to have an item inside the scene that the turret is always going to be pointing at. I think just for simplicity's sakes, I'm going to have a point at a locator, just an empty locator inside of our three-dimensional scene. So if I go up to the top of our setup layout, this button right here will allow me to generate a locator. Bloop. Where's the default location for all locators? The origin. Okay. Let's give it a good name. Target, that's the name of my locator. And I'll move it out from the, I'll move it way out over here so that we can see it inside the frame. All right, now let's start making some constraints. I want my turret to automatically point towards the direction of that locator. How do I do it? Now we don't want to parent it, right? Because we don't want to change the location of my turret. I just want to change the rotation. How do we apply a constraint from one item to another?
How do you explain arrow and the circle?
We're going back to the target and the arrow, all that jazz. Yeah, let me help you out. Okay. It all begins with a selection at item level, right? And I want that item to be constrained to that item. Okay? And that's how it works. We select the child first, then we select the parent. Okay? And once all of that is done, all of our constraint modifiers over here activate. So I want to use the directional constraint. Boom, check it out. And now this guy over here is pointing at that locator. Let's move it around. Let's test it. Aha! Boom shakalaka. So let's do it one more time. So I select the top part of my turret first. I'm holding down the control key. I'm grabbing my locator. The child always gets selected first. And in my mind, the mnemonic that I use is this gets constrained to that. All in item mode. Yeah, you got it. And we'll apply the directional constraint. And you get a nice little bit of feedback from Moto with this purple line that tells you that the constraint is active and this relationship has been forged. Let's grab it real fast. Let's move our locator around the scene, and yeah, check it out. Our turret is always, always, always going to be tracking it. However, we have a little bit of a problem here that we need to solve. Remember the illusion that we're trying to create here. It's 2 degrees of rotation. I want the top part of my turret to be doing this, to be going up and down along its x-axis, right? But then I want the middle part to be rotating as well, to make it look like the middle is the part of the turret that's spinning it, and then the turret is just going up and down. right? At the moment, that's not what we have. The top part of our turret is moving along both degrees of rotation, right? It's doing this left and right, but it's also going up and down, okay? I only want the top part of my turret to be rotating along the y-axis, okay? So we're going to start to filter some of our channels. This is an extension. Yeah, go ahead.
I got the rear end of the top turret constraining to the locator,
Yeah,
and I thought I had switched it around, but
you didn't. That's okay, because we can fix it, right? If you go into the actual constraint itself, let's see. Put, oh, here we go. Under your properties here, we still want to have the constraint fire down the z-axis. Do negative, see if that changes it. Yep. All right. Since we're here, the directional constraint properties are where we're going to make some changes to only have the turret go up and down on this top item, right? And it's a pretty cool little system. Let me show you how it works. We're going to add some options to our constraint that will make this a little bit more powerful. You can find those options down at the bottom of our properties panels, and it's right here. Add output options. Okay. Now, once you click on it, you're going to see this matrix channel effects section pop into your properties. And what we're going to do is to tell the computer, hey, don't rotate this along the x or the z. Only rotate this item along the y-axis. Let's test it. Okay, whoops. I may have done it backwards. Yeah, I did it backwards. That's not the, I put the wrong one in. Let's go back into the output options. Here it is. So let's put that back to 0, and I think x has to be 100%. Yeah, there we go. Because now, now the top one's only moving up and down, which is what we want. But how are we going to get that middle part of the turret to rotate? The top part's doing its job. How are we going to get the middle part to also follow that locator? We can do an additional directional constraint. We can have as many directional constraints to one locator as we want. Okay? Let's just do it real fast. So this time, I'm going to grab the middle part of my hierarchy. And once again, I'll hold down the control key and grab my locator and apply another directional constraint. Bloop. Aha. Okay, that's good. This is what we want. Kinda. Right? This is what we're after here. This is starting to look pretty good. But clearly, I don't want the middle part of my turret, kind of bouncing up like that. So what should I do here? Similar to what we just did with the top, what should we add on our directional constraint? Yeah, those options, those output options. Let's do it real fast. This time I'm going to return to my hierarchy. I don't need any of this mumbo jumbo, so I'm going to just collapse it. And if I go to the middle item, which now contains that second directional constraint, I'm going to click on the disclosure button and select the constraint. And this time, once again, add output options. We'll put this at 0 and this at 0. Let's see what that gives us. If I move my locator now, yeah, look at that. The middle part is now exclusively rotating along its y-axis. We move it up and down. The middle part doesn't move. We move it forward and backward. Well, it's actually changing its space along the x-axis, so it's rotating. But point being, now we've broken out those degrees of rotation to 2 separate directional constraints, and we're getting the most accurate reproduction of the illusion possible. Yeah?
What happens if you set the output option to like 50%?
Let's find out. Let's explore it. So let's do it on the top piece, because I think that would probably be a little bit easier to see. So here's the matrix channel effect. So let's put this to 50%. Grab my locator. Yeah, now it's not not pointing directly at it. If you look at it from kind of the side, see how it's not a perfect linear line. It's 50% the height of whatever the transformation of the locator is. Yep. Let's put that back to 100. Yeah, go ahead.
Do you think there's any way to make it so that the turret is kind of like trailing behind the target?
And you may have to just hand animate that a little bit. Yeah. So one of the things that you could do, yeah, go ahead, question or comment?
Well, yeah, I tried doing what you did, but for some reason, when it's not making the turret move, but rather the locator move instead.
Yeah, because you're still selecting the center point. We want to select the item. Yeah. Here you go.
So, locator?
Yep. Okay.
Okay,
Fire off the move tool, see what you get. That's the rotate tool. Yeah. Oh, you don't want your entire turret parented to that locator. If you look at my hierarchy, the turret is in its own hierarchy, and the locator is outside of that. That's the issue.
I'm trying to get rid of the locator.
Yeah. So this is what Thomas has. Okay. How can I remove an object? Excuse me. Remove an item from an existing hierarchy? Does anyone know? Just click and drag it out. Yeah, you got it. So I'm going to grab my base, and I can go above it or below it. Just click and drag it out of the hierarchy, and now it's out. All right. Okay. Well, we'll have to maybe we can figure that out, during lab today for sure. As a reminder, and I mentioned this at the beginning of our little spiel today. Right there, a dedicated video on Canvas that talks about what we just went through, and it adds a couple other things into the mix as well. Let's do this just for giggles, because this would be a whole lot of fun. I want to put this turret, or excuse me, this locator, kind of right around in here. And I mentioned earlier that it may be kind of fun to create some sort of like rocket system that allows you to fire like projectiles out of this thing. Now, what could be an easy solution to this problem? Given everything that we've talked about, how can we have some sort of projectile go from the inside of our cannons to the outside? Rigging is creative problem solving.
What's the question here? Put something inside the cannon, and then like carry it to the cannon, and then make we'll make the slider of it traveling out of the cannon, but since it's currently wherever the cannon is pointing.
I love it. I love it, and I think you're in the right ballpark. So the idea that or the problem that we're trying to solve is that I want to create the illusion that there's something coming out, bullets or rockets coming out of my cannon, right? That's the intent, okay? I liked the direction that Adrian was going. Maybe we can parent something to the cannon. That way, they're always going to be in line with each other no matter where they move inside of our three-dimensional space. It'd be cool if it could like run down a defined path. So it really would look like they're shooting down out of that. Here's kind of a cool idea. This is one possible solution, and this is just kind of Pat's crazy invention. What if we made a path out of a curve, right? And then we did a path constraint from like, I don't know, a sphere or something, a missile, okay? And we path constrained that missile to the path. That missile would now run down that path, wherever it was, and then we could parent that path to the turret, right? So wherever the turret goes, the invisible path would go, and then the rocket would always go down that invisible path. Let's prototype. Let's see if this crazy idea works. So I'm going to create a new mesh item, and I'm going to call this new mesh item just path. I'll call it curve just so it's a little bit easier to understand. So this is going to be my curve, right? I'm going to look at my scene from the top, and let's see. I'll reset some of this. There we go. At the very least, the location of my target locator is at 0 along the x-axis. And let's do this. On my curve layer, let's just go ahead and add a curve. Now, luckily for us, in our setup tools, the developers down at the Foundry have given us the standard kind of Hermite curve tool, which is neat. Okay? And I'm just going to draw a path, maybe from there to, I don't know, there. Now, that's not very straight, so let's fix it, because that's going to drive me crazy. Dominic asked earlier, how can I make all the points along my path be aligned to a specific orientation or axes? Can you guys see that this is not a straight line? Both the points are in a different position along the x-axis, right? Here's the easy way of doing it. Just fire off the scale tool. If you have negative scale deactivated, as I have over here, now we can just scale those 2 points to a value of 0%. For me, it's along the x-axis, but now they're just in a perfect straight line. And I can place them wherever I want. And I'm just going to eyeball it. Right around there is just perfect. So now my path is kind of in the middle of that barrel. Okay. Let's get that parented in to our system. Okay. So I want to parent my curve to this. In this particular situation, I want to parent it to the top. Okay. Now, wherever the top goes, so goes the path, right? Okay. That's working real well. Now we need to have some sort of projectile flying out of that. Let's explore the preset library. We can just use like a sphere. How awesome. Okay, I'm going to go there. Let's do this. Huh? I'm going to fire rubber chickens. Because that has to happen, right? Rubber chickens have to happen. Luckily, it's a small rubber chicken, so it may actually fit in the barrel of my turret. Let's do it. Okay. So here's my chicken. That's the child. The curve layer is the parent. And like our directional constraints, the modifier tab is going to allow us to create the path constraint. Now let's see, is it in there? Let's find out.
So the chicken is supposed to be
It's in there.
in the origin, and then
Yeah,
if the chicken is not in the origin, they not gonna attach.
it will. It'll still attach. It'll just be offset a little bit. Okay,
Yeah.
we can go in and fix that. Yeah. All right. So that's awesome. Let's change now. I think it's got to be going like head first. So I'll change the axis that we're doing. Let's do Y. There we go. Now we're going. I like it. Okay. Now for the animation of this, the path percentage is the channel that we're going to animate to have this object move along the path. Okay. Think of this like a railroad. At 0% is at the beginning of the path, and at 100%, the item constrained to the path will be at the end of the path. There it is way over there. So if I was to animate this, and I'll just use the slider here. You can see it just travels down that path. Now, the mistake that people make is that they try to animate a zillion bullets in like a second, right? Remember, we need to slow down our understanding of movement to ensure that our audience sees this thing going out. So don't try to have a very small thing moving very fast within inside the frame. It's just going to blink on and off, okay? It's not going to appear as though it's actually that we're actually firing something. Okay, if you were to look at like war films and you have like machine guns, do you see each individual bullet? No, it's impossible, right? So how do we visualize it? Yeah, and tracer rounds. Every once in a while, every second you see a tracer round fire off, right? That's the filmmaker's way of showing to the audience that there's something coming out of this thing called a machine gun. Okay. I've always found that idea of a tracer round really kind of silly, especially if you're in the military, right? Let me show the enemy exactly where I'm shooting. Right?
I think it missed a step briefly. Could
Yeah.
you zoom on the curve item
Okay.
and expand what's under it?
Yes, so I did a path constraint from my curve. So this is the path constraint from the curve to the top. Oh, I'm sorry. Nope, I misspoke. Excuse me. I parented the curve to the top item. Okay. and then I did the path constraint from the chicken to the curve.
Okay.
Yep. If you wanted to fire multiples, okay, so if we go back to my path constraint, this is kind of neat. It's a little bit difficult to see because my chicken is so small, but you can continue to do this, right? If wrap is enabled, as soon as that item gets to 100% of the path length, it's going to go all the way back to the beginning and start over again, okay? Let's just do it real fast. Let's throw some keyframes down. Let's put this at 0. Okay, so in frame 0, we'll have my path percentage be 0%. And at frame, let's just do, oh, I don't know, let's just do frame 60. It'll be at 100%. So nice and slow. There it goes. Boop, and then it stops, okay? But if we wanted to keep going, right, so maybe we want to fire 2 chickens over the course of 120 frames. I'm going to hit undo just for a second. No, I don't have to. Actually, I'm going to go to frame 120 in my timeline. But now I'm going to put my path percentage to 200%. But since wrap is on, it's going to like repeat this action. Okay? It's going to wrap around the constraint. Here it comes, hits the end, and then it goes back. Okay? So it's a cool way of repeating some sort of projectile going down your path, just having that wrap functionality on.
You put 200%, and if you want to make it 3 or 4 times, like 300, 400.
You got it. Let's do it. This is where that middle keyframe is going to get in the way for me, so I'm just going to delete it. But maybe over the course of 100 frames, 120 frames, we want it to fire 3 chickens. Okay? I'm going to put that at 300%. And now, there goes 1, 2, 3.